The result of the Orange Bowl was as shocking to me as any during the bowl season. I guess, actually, let me rephrase that. The performance in the Orange Bowl was as shocking to me as any during the bowl season. I can say that because I released a video that said why Notre Dame is going to demolish Penn State. I thought the Fighting Irish were primed to beat the doors off of Penn State. And the Nittany Lions had a pretty good game plan. They just didn't pull it off in the end. And it's really easy to sit here and second guess James Franklin. Ball's at the 15-yard line. Your quarterback's not playing super great. The idea that you were going to march down the field and win the game was not super high. But I don't know that I can fault somebody for trying to put themselves in the national championship game. I would rather go down that way than, the idea that they just would have simply taken a knee and gone to overtime, where the prevailing thought from some people on social media is that they immediately would have won. I don't know that it's as cut and dry as that, but that's neither here nor there. Notre Dame's moving on to the national championship game. Ohio State's moving on to the national championship game, where they beat Texas with a play that will go down in Ohio State lore. It's just that play, the sack recovery, 45-second rumble to the end zone by Jack Sawyer, will go down in Ohio State history as one of the program's greatest plays that has had a plethora of great plays. And there's one thing that I'm interested in that both Ohio State and Notre Dame share. Now, we're going to have plenty of time to dissect this game, this matchup for the national championship game. But I hate the manufactured storylines that will come up over the course of the next 10 days or so. But I do think it's interesting that one thing Ohio State and Notre Dame have in common is they have former Power 4 head coaches as coordinators. And I think that when you put coaches like Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman in the positions that they were put in, where neither one of them had ever been a head coach before, young guys who were, you could say, and I don't think it's unfair to say, were inexperienced. Now, obviously, Ryan Day just added Chip Kelly as his offensive coordinator. But having that perspective of somebody who's done the job before and also done the job and failed. Chip Kelly, I think, would probably say his tenure at UCLA was a failure, had been fired as the San Francisco 49ers head coach and the Philadelphia Eagles head coach. Has been fired. Al Golden, the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame, was at Miami, did not get the job done, got fired. Being able, one, to rely on somebody on your staff that has done the job at the level that you have done. Oregon is not that far of a step down from Ohio State. Miami is not that far down of a step from Notre Dame. To be able to consult with that person who's done the job at the highest level and also has had the time to reflect on why it didn't work is a really valuable asset to have for a young, inexperienced, first-time head coach. Now, at this stage of his career, Ryan Day is an experienced head coach. He's been doing it for a couple of years now. Marcus Freeman is still a relatively young, inexperienced coach. But to have somebody, because I think when you're the young guy in the room, when you're the young hotshot guy, I think it's easy to, one, prove that you're the smartest guy in the room, because that's just one of the things that youth allows. I imagine you could probably attest to it. I can attest to it. From when I was 18 to 30, I was the smartest guy on the planet. All you had to do was ask me and I'd tell you. And so when you get in that situation where you are the young guy in your profession, you're the young guy in the room, you're the young guy leading the program, it's easy to tinker. It's easy to try to prove that you're the smartest guy in the room, and to have somebody on your staff that is not the yes man, but is probably actually more the no guy. Chip Kelly probably tells Ryan Day, no, you don't want to do that, and here's why, more frequently than you think. And Al Golden probably tells probably tells Marcus Freeman, no, you're not going to want to do that, and here's why. Think about it from this angle. to have that wisdom, to have that respect, to have that perspective, I think is an important one. There's been a lot of talk about how Ohio State changed its offense since the Michigan debacle, disaster, whatever you want to call it. And the prevailing thought is that the offensive coaches got together, sat down, and said, what the hell are we going to do in the playoff? Because we got to figure something out, because what we're doing right now isn't working. To be able to have the wherewithal to say, hey, and I've said before, I'll say it again, the people who recognize that things aren't working or are willing to say, this isn't going to work, how do we accomplish what's next, I have a lot of respect for. So if you sit down and say, this didn't work, obviously, we need to change it. What are we going to change? How are we going to go about our business? Because whatever Ohio State did, it is working. It has worked. They beat the brakes off of Tennessee, had no problems with Oregon, got in a tight back and forth battle with Texas that they eventually pull away for a 2-touchdown win. It's undeniably worked. And so whether it's Chip Kelly leading those conversations, whether it's Ryan Day leading those conversations, the fact that the conversations happen proves that programs like Ohio State and Notre Dame, in my eyes, are better for having those failed Power 4 coaches on their coaching staffs, because you can help guide that program when Marcus Freeman might make a mistake that he doesn't know he's about to make, but something that Al Golden encountered while he was a head coach before. And he's got a long list of years where he was a head coach. And Chip Kelly's been a head coach for a really long time. To be able to lean on that experience, I think, is an important thing. When you look at the guys that are on the Penn State staff, you look at the guys that are on the Texas staff, if you look around, they don't maybe have that. And that's not to say that Steve Sarkisian is a young, inexperienced head coach, or James Franklin is a young, inexperienced head coach. But when you've had guys that have played, coached, and led programs at the highest level on your staff, I think that's a really invaluable asset to have. And I'm not trying to say that that's why Notre Dame and Ohio State are the last two standing. But I do think it's interesting that those two programs share some similarities, where first-time head coaches at a program where on-the-job training is not going to be accepted. You have to be really good from the jump. And at times, Notre Dame has not been really good from the jump. Marcus Freeman lost his first 3 games. And he's lost to Northern Illinois, and he's lost to Marshall. And Ryan Day has lost 3 straight times to Michigan, and he lost a big game to Oregon, and he's lost to Clemson. He's blown 2 touchdown leads in the playoffs twice. On-the-job training at programs like Ohio State and Notre Dame is not accepted. So being in a situation where you can have those experienced guys on your staff, big deal. And I think it's just one part of why Ohio State and Notre Dame are going to play for the national championship. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.